Death of an Ernst Young employee in India has ignited global outrage over workplace conditions. Now, according to a Reuters report, the Pune office has been operating without a state permit regulating work hours since 2007. That's been 17 years now. The deceased employee had reportedly been working around the clock, a concern highlighted by her mother in a letter to Ernst Young's India chairman Shailendra Paul. Maharashtra's additional Labour Commissioner has confirmed that the EY office in Pune was not registered under the state's Shops and Establishments Act, which limits work hours for adults to 9 hours per day and 48 hours per week. He noted that EY only applied for this registration in Feb 2024, and the application was rejected due to long-standing failures to comply. The law states that non-compliance leading to serious injury or death could result in up to 6 months of imprisonment and a fine of up to 5 lakh rupees. EY has been given 7 days to respond to these findings. Speaking to the Times Network, the Additional Labour Commissioner of Pune has detailed the crackdown on EY's Pune office, saying that the lack of a license is a major breach, and it doesn't seem that the company wants to abide by labour laws.
सात आठ एक्ट के अंडर उनका इंस्पेक्शन किया हुआ है. उन्होंने एक मेजर ये मिला है कि शॉप एक्ट में उन्होंने 2007 से लाइसेंस लिया नहीं था. वो एक बड़ा ब्रीच है. फॉर द सर्विस कंडीशन ऑफ द एम्प्लॉइज ओनली 2 एक्ट, शॉप एक्ट और फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट. So they are not falling in the category of factories. So they should have taken the shop act license. And it is free. It is online. Why they are not taking? It means that they don't want to abide the labor law. They have to comply within 7 days. So we are waiting for their compliance, and then we will check what were the irregularities they have already rectified or not. If the fault has not been rectified, then we have to go to the court against them. We want to see whether they were paying the overtime or not. Lady's mother has written, that deceased lady, that she was working for more than 14 hours a day. But the company is saying that she was on a weekly off for 2 days.
So let me now go across to my guest who's joining me at this point. We have Saurav Kumar, Chief Operating Officer of Promise India Private Limited, and Aditya Pratap, Advocate, joining me as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this quick chat. Aditya Pratap, let me start with you. Labor laws are something which people generally in India's country don't really apply to the corporate sector, especially in MNC like EY. But the death of Anna has really exposed and opened everyone's eyes to the importance of having more regulation in the corporate sector as well, especially when it comes to a cap on the number of working hours here. What are the repercussions that EY, according to you, could go through now that it has been found prima facie not guilty of not abiding by labor laws?
I would like to begin my stand with an opening statement. As per the reports, the employee at EY was literally overworked to death. On this point, I have a question not only to EY, but to corporate India as a whole. That today, if pilots are subjected to a crushing workload of 26 hours, we all know what will happen. Planes will start crashing. And clearly, when I look at the legal regime in India, the laws are not adequate to punish especially white-collar employers who overwork the employees to death. Such predatory work culture, which encourages overwork, burnout, should be heavily dealt with. And I would like to fault the state and the Labour Department for not doing enough. We have thousands of IT parks in Pune. What has the Labour Department been doing? Today, in 2020, the Occupational Health, Safety and Workplace Standards Code had come into existence. What is the level of implementation of that? Today, when I look at EY, first and foremost, I will see this issue from 2 angles: civil and criminal. First and foremost, I call upon the deceased employee's parents to file a heavy suit for exemplary compensation against EY. Ultimately, she was the servant of EY, she was the employee. It was a master-servant relationship, and she was working even beyond duty hours under the direction and control of her master. I strongly believe that a compensation suit of at least 50 to 100 crores should be filed against EY for such a grievous loss. Secondly, a proper police investigation should be done. Today, I say, why can't the ambit of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita BNS be expanded to include such acts? Because fact of the matter is, you know very well. See, let's suppose this was an industrial building where a steel foundry, machining, etc. We all know very well what
Okay.
are workplace hazards. The point is, when you are literally destroying the body clock of an employee, are you not subjecting that employee to workplace hazards? And the government labor department remains a mute
All right.
spectator. I
All
strongly
right.
believe
Aditya
that
Pratap,
even criminal
appreciate your
liability should
passion.
be a
We're
part
trying
of
to
the.
have a I completely agree with your views, Aditya Pratap, which is why, I mean, we are having a civil discussion here. I appreciate your passion at this point. But Saurav Kumar, is it even feasible to have a ceiling on working hours in corporate India? I mean, and in principle, it is all fine, but we all work in a corporate sector. We all know that in India, unfortunately, work is measured in terms of measurable tasks, not in terms of hours at this point. I'll give a simple example here. Most of corporate India is working from home in a hybrid model here. Say for Monday and Friday, they work from home, and Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they come to office to work. Now, in such a scenario here, how do you even measure something like working hours in terms of when you're working from home in a hybrid model? Are we looking at perhaps trying to superimpose a factory setup or a factory system of working conditions and laws onto a corporate sector, something which obviously is not very aligned or something which is not very congruent?
Yeah, Ritangshu. So you're right. For a fact, in India, long working hours and high work pressure is very common, and it is actually not possible to check exactly in a corporate that if government mandates are being followed or not. And especially for for the roles where deadlines related roles like sales, business development, accounts, the working hours are quite high, long, and work pressure is quite high. So I think for the corporates to deal with this, there has to be very strong feedback and support system for the employees. As in from the HR department of the company, there has to be weekly or monthly feedback systems with the employees if they are feeling to be pressurized by the work or have to do long working hours. And the companies should come up with employee well-being systems so that the work pressure and the working hours can be controlled. Especially, Western countries are focused on work-life balance, but I think India should also, put their focus on how to put work-life balance in the corporates, especially in startups and these big corporates. Especially in Bloomies, we have
Let's delve
10,000
a bit
domestic
deeper,
workers
Saurav
placed.
Kumar, because ever since these details came out on EY, ever since these details came out about what happened to Anna Sebastian, a lot of people pointed out for a company which is a big four company like EY, which has offices across the globe. EY is no stranger to the importance of having a work life balance, and many people who have worked with big four companies in the past have pointed out that when it comes to most international operations, a company like EY and any other big MNC, abroad internationally has very strict rules and regulations in place about not working overtime, not being disturbed when you're off duty, not being asked to work on weekends, not being asked to work when you're supposed to be off, and so on. But when it comes to India, the working culture shifts entirely. Now, is it because there is a surplus of labor in the Indian market available, so you know that no one will ever quit because they're overworked? Is it because there is a concept of a Hazuri which still exists, especially with Indian managers who know they can abuse Indian labor because somehow we are used to working under this master-slave relationship, as Aditya Pratap pointed out? Or is it the lack of labor laws being enforced properly? What seems to be the problem when it comes to Indian operations of global companies?
I think the major problem is the lack of jobs. We have seen a lot of employees to handle the work pressure and the long working hours, and they do not complain about it because there are, not a lot of options for them. So they have to stick with their jobs and cannot complain about it. And as we speak about the labor laws, I think the strict actions needs to be there with the corporate employees as well as the gig workers and blue collar workers, factory workers. There has to be strict actions if any employees or any staff is overworked, or the companies are taking leverage of their doing jobs in the company and are not getting any other options in the market.
Absolutely. Let me go across to Aditya Pratap for the last word. Aditya Pratap, what are reasonable reforms? You believe that we need reforms in the labor sector to make them a bit more applicable to the corporate sector, the white collar sector? Because as I've been pointing out, the question of hours and shifts were devised under a factory system in an industrial age where factory workers had to work for 9 hours on a shift on an assembly line or do a particular job. Here in corporate India, things change. If you're given a task or if you're given a presentation to make, you have to finish that presentation, whether it takes 2 hours, whether it takes 6 hours, whether it takes 20 hours here. So should there then be a natural revision in terms of laws which are more applicable, regulations more applicable to the corporate sector, and something which is much easier to measure overwork versus exploitation?
Well, see, let me begin with my own personal example. I am a lawyer's office. I tell my staff members, come on time, leave on time. Come at 10, leave at 7. Likewise, we go to the Constitution of India. Under Constitution of India, India is a welfare state. And under
No,
the
but Aditya
directive
Pratap,
principles
sorry
of
to
state
interrupt. Since you
policy,
gave a personal example, I'll just point on that. If you have an important hearing in the Supreme Court tomorrow, which suddenly comes up right now, can you really
yes,
adhere by the exit times for yourself and your shift? Sometimes exigencies happen in which you'll have to work overtime, right?
very good question. So if my employee does extra hours, I will give them compensatory of the very next day after the hearing, when we all breathe easy. So,
Fair enough.
likewise, my message, see, India is a welfare state, and under the directive principles of state policy, the state is under constitutional obligation to frame reasonable working hours which promote the health and welfare of the working class of the country. Today, see, an employer-employee relationship is governed by contract, but the state by law has the law-making power to prescribe contractual restrictions. For instance, state can very well prescribe that if in the case of any sector, we have so many sectors of industries. If it's office sector, IT parks, today all companies in IT parks take the benefit of IT park policy. So when you're taking the benefit of state policy, the government can very well prescribe the working hours, 9 to 6, 10 to 7, 9-hour workday, beyond that overtime, and any changes,
Yes.
compensate. Because, and common law cannot come in the way of this, because this law is
Okay.
is aimed at protecting the right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Furthermore, do we see what is the adverse demographic impact of this? Because companies subject the employees to crushing work hours, women are not having children today. We all, as an advocate, I have seen the work culture in corporate law firms. Women struggle to have, earlier people have 2 kids, now they're trying to have bellies, they can have 1 kid. What will happen to the demographics of this nation in the long term just because short-sighted bosses want to look at the balance sheets? For them, the Range Rovers are more important than the health and life safety of the employees. So I believe that the more the
All
government
right.
takes up back, today we have a government which is very pro-private sector. But let me tell you, the moment the state cannot vacate the crucial areas of welfare legislation and let the private sector have it all.
Okay.
Companies are free to do. So
All right.
certain parameters need to be imposed so that if an employee feels that the employment
Yes.
contract timings are being violated, and there should be a proper quasi-judicial forum which can be approached for redress.
All right, Aditya Pratap and Saurav Kumar, thank you so much for joining us on this short but very meaningful discussion about what are the repercussions of this unfortunate tragedy that we have seen at EY at this point, and the lessons which the Labour Ministry and corporate India have to look at in order to ensure that employees are not overworked to the point of exhaustion. Thank you so much, gentlemen.